this 2 weeks ago was National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. There's Taffy. Good morning, Taffy. Good to see you. And because we were in a blizzard, we didn't get to acknowledge, National Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And then last week we did an intensive that we had to move because of the blizzard. So this entire week we've been focusing on, I've been doing a 10 o'clock little video every morning about Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And the theme of the week has been everybody has a seat at the table. And then come as you are. That was their theme. Everybody has a seat at the table. Come as you are. And so we've talked about the different eating disorders and, men with having eating disorders and the different types of eating disorders. And then tomorrow I'm going to be talking about children and teenagers with eating disorders and really what parents can do early on, and then as the disease progresses, and then Friday I'm going to do a video on recovery. Really, what recovery looks like. We can talk about the problem, and we do have to know what the problem is before we're going to find a solution. But I want to focus Friday on the joys of recovery, and there is a lot of joy in recovery. And if you miss recovery, you miss the joy of it. So I'm talking about this morning, and I know that the clients at Shades heard a lecture on understanding relapse, and they do a very good lecture over there on relapse, and it's geared for all addictions. And so what I want to focus on really this morning is relapse, signs and symptoms of relapse and eating disorders. There's a lot of similarities with eating disorders and addictions, and I believe that eating disorders do go through the addiction cycle, and with similarities there are differences. So that's why I want to talk specific this morning about signs and symptoms of relapse of eating disorders. And so, one of the things that we support here and teach here is the 12-step process, and people go into meetings, and some folks leave here and get into a 12-step program, and we've got people in recovery for 30, 33 years, 25 years, 20, 15, that have never relapsed. And I think a lot of it is because they have found a group, have found the 12 steps and found support in the 12-step groups. And I know that contributes to their recovery. Because I think without the 12 steps, I would not be in recovery today. Because the 12 steps is a planned program of recovery that is done in 12 steps. And if you do the first 9 steps, something's going to change in your life. If you don't, probably nothing will change. But by doing the steps, you do the steps the first time, and then you continue, they become a working part of the mind and body. But we have to be around people who are also on the same page and on the same journey that can remind us, and also if you're going to 12-step meetings, what you get to see is, there'll be people coming back after relapse, and we can learn from others. I hate to say it, but they can relapse for you. You can see what, and hear them talking, and by the grace of God, hopefully they do make it back to the rooms, and some don't. That's the sad part. So I'm going to get into some warning signs, and the early signs, the early symptoms, the mid-stage symptoms, and then advanced symptoms of relapse with eating disorders. So like one of the first thing is irregular 12-step meetings and our aftercare attendance. We have that Thursday night group here at Shays. It's open to people for the rest of their natural life, and I would have given anything if I could have gone back to the treatment center where I went through treatment. But for some reason or other, they wouldn't even let us back on campus. Once you're gone, you're gone. And they only kept the treatment center there a year, so it's not even there anymore. But I would have loved to have been able to go back. So we make that available. And then the Tuesday night alumni meeting that was on last night, that's made up of all former clients of Shades. And so you have that in common with each other. That you have been through a program together, and so that meeting is really growing. Jackie, who's not here today, is in charge of our alumni, and she's doing an excellent job. So that's could be part of your aftercare. And so what happens is people stop doing that. They stop going to meetings, they stop calling people, they stop calling their sponsor, and they say things like, well, I'll do it my way. Or they'll say things, well, I don't need those people. Or they'll say things like, well, I really can't relate, really. And then they'll say things, well, I don't like those OA people. I just don't like them. They're just too serious, or there's not enough recovery. Or they talk about the same things over and over. And so when you start saying that, what we encourage people to do is go to 6 meetings real close together and see if you get anything out of it. And then if you don't like that group, go to another group. Keep going till you find a group of people that works for you, that you can work with. Overeaters Anonymous, when it started, was for overeaters, that's period. And now it's not, it's for all. I wish in some ways we could change the name, because we do send anorexics there. I have known hundreds of anorexics and bulimics that have recovered by attending Overeaters Anonymous meetings, and they're in good recovery today. Because the disease has so many similarities, yes, there's differences, but it's getting with like kind and being able to talk about what's going on. It's not what we're eating, but what's eating us. So some of these warning symptoms precede. This happens way before we even pick up sometimes. So one of the things that if you start weighing yourself, going back, having a relationship with the scales, jumping on the scale, every day or several times a day, that's a warning sign, symptom of relapse. Another one is, and my friend Misty is here, and I know she's going to look at me, but anyway, it is looking at in the mirror all the time. I've never met a mirror I didn't like in recovery. Now,
This is
in
true.
the disease, I would never look at myself. I would look from the neck up and never look, at 287 pounds, I knew what that body looked like, and I wasn't interested in looking at it. But today, and I will tell you, some of the reasons that I do look in the mirror, it's not that I'm so vain, but it's really hard for people that have been obese, for their mind and their body to catch up with them. I'll look in the mirror every once in a while, and it's still hard for me to realize that I'm not carrying 50, 60, 100 excess pounds around. And I do a double take sometime. But if I got into doing that all the time, then, I would be concerned about it. But anyway, that's another thing, just looking at the mirror. And really for anorexics, it's looking in the mirror and, for an anorexic, what an anorexic does, they look in the mirror and they see that they're overweight or they see fat. For compulsive overeaters, we look in the mirror, and even after we've lost weight, sometimes we doubt that we have, and it's hard for the brain and body to catch up. So Another thing about a warning symptom is when you go back to dieting instead of a food plan. You know, regardless whether you're anorexic, bulimic, or compulsive overeaters, you know, there's ads on TV, every magazine, everywhere about this special new diet, the special thing that is going to work instantly and be the best you've ever had. And it's, you know, and it is, like I've taught before, it's $1 billion business. And if you fall for that, you know, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. If you've been through Shades or even our intensive programs, you know how to feed yourself. You know that we don't believe in diets. Diets don't work. You go on them to go off of them. But meal plans do. And there's over 240 wonderful foods that we can choose from. There's really no bad or good food. You know, food is food. Now, and that's why the choices has to be, you know, with, okay, so I could spend hours on that. But anyway, you get the idea. So, you know, when you stop doing healthy meal planning and then go on, you know, look at those diets, you're already in relapse by then. And then missing or skipping meals. Now, this could apply to anorexics and compulsive overeaters, both, because when compulsive overeater starts losing weight and they just feel good about themselves, and you know, and then they get compliments, and then a lot of times they'll want to start cutting the food down. They'll want to start, maybe skipping meals. Now, I will tell you, the body will think, oh my God, what is sheer? What is he doing to me now? And the body will try to reserve what it has, and it will hold on to the weight. So I hate to tell you, you know, skipping meals is not going to work for an anorexic or an overeater, either one. It is about looking at the food like medication. You know, feed yourself appropriately 3 times a day and a snack at night if that's on your plan, and feed yourself every 4 hours. That, you know, and I hear people all the time, and I've got somebody on here, got several on here that says, well, I just don't like to eat that often. Well, I just eat, you know, when my husband does, or I just eat 1 meal a day, or I just eat twice a day. And what that is you are feeding in to your eating disorder. You know, it is about feeding yourself appropriately, 3 balanced meals a day and nothing in between, unless you have a prescribed meal plan by a dietitian or something where you need a snack, and a lot of anorexics do have that morning snack or afternoon. And what happens though, when you have a regular plan, and then the rest of the time, guess what? You get to live your life. It's not about the food. Quit making it all about the food. That we can learn to live life in between the feedings, you know. And if you'll notice a baby, when a baby starts crying, it's for several pretty basic reasons. One thing is that their diapers need to be changed. You know, most of them don't like a wet or dirty diaper, so that's one thing. Another thing is they're hungry. They cry when they are hungry. And then another thing, they will cry if they need nurturing. I mean, you know, they need nutrition. They need having nourishment, but they also need nurturing. And so, you know, with eating disordered people, a lot of times eating disordered people really don't know how to get being nurtured from another person. So it's much easier to reach out for the food instead of another person. And so in between mealtime, you know, pick up the phone and call someone and check on them. Pick up the phone and check with a neighbor. You know, don't all have to be people with eating disorders. It's about getting involved in your community, doing something besides focusing on the food in yourself. You know, for any addiction, We are self-centered people. And if you want to know what your problem is, go look in the mirror and say, good morning, problem. I mean, whether we like it or not, when we have a problem, it's not so much the problem, it's how we're going through it or not going through it. And so when you feed yourself, 8 o'clock in the morning, at noon, and then 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, the rest of the time you get to live your life and suit up and show up and be a part of life instead of isolating. That's another early symptom of relapse, is starting to isolate. And then that mental obsession. If you've been in the recovery long enough, see, we believe that any addiction is a spiritual problem, in that we make the substance the God of our understanding. We began to worship the eating disorder, or the food, the not eating. We have rituals, almost like religious rituals around the food. And so, but if you have been in the program long enough to have had the grace of of having clean abstinence. See, abstinence is a gift from God. It's not a diet. When you've had that mental obsession removed about the food or any addiction, you need to treasure it because that is God's grace. That is a gift to remove that mental obsession. And so when you have that removed, one of the things that you can tell that you're getting ready to relapse is when that mental obsession returns. When the thought to eat or to binge or purge or not eat returns, that's that mental obsession. And you haven't even acted out yet. It's in the thinking, that mental obsession, that idea that overcomes all other ideas. It's that thought to restrict. It's that thought to overeat. It's that thought to go to the store and buy that something or whatever. Okay, the mental obsession. And then what else will return and be in the forefront is negative body image. Negative body image. And this is where good affirmations come in. And, we teach affirmations here, and I know some people really grab hold of them and and use them daily. And the ones who do, they see results, and we see results in them. And those who laugh about them and put them down and all that probably don't get much benefit out of it. But affirmations work because they change the brain. This is brain chemistry, folks. And then we have people not only do the affirmations at mealtime while they're in treatment, or even in an intensive. We encourage them to write 50 short, very I am statements, affirmations, healthy affirmations, whether they are come to, whether they're in the present or not. Act as if. One of the things, I am a healthy eater. I am at a healthy body weight. Say all of those things. Start embracing recovery. Get your brain prepared, and your brain will prepare the body. So affirmations helps to change that negative body image. And then another thing that you can see, this is before relapse. All of this is happening before you really relapse, and that is increase in caffeine. We don't talk a whole lot about it. We do some at Shades, but you notice when you come to Shades, you're put on decaf and limited decaf. And bulimics, particularly anorexics, well, most of your eating disorder people want to drink caffeine, any form of caffeine, and most of them want to drink coffee, massive amounts of coffee. And what it is, and y'all know the ones that are doing it, you're not, you don't have stupid on your forehead. There's nothing any more smarter about food and food rituals and all than eating disorder clients. I mean, eating disorder people are knowledgeable. So they know when they take in and drink a lot of caffeine, it can serve as diuretic purposes, it can serve as laxatives, and they think, and it can curb the appetite. It doesn't always curb the appetite, but it's usually about diuretics and trying to flush the food out and so a lot of caffeine. If you're back into a lot of caffeine, you're on your way to relapse. And so another thing that happens is, we teach people here to learn to live a balanced life. There's 24 hours in a day. 8 hours work, 8 hours rest, 8 hours play. The part that's the hardest for addicts is that 8 hours of play. That 8 hours is going to meetings, being around like kind, doing volunteer work, having some fun in your life. And so when you start overworking, get into work addiction or underworking, showing up late to work, leaving early, not doing your part, not being a worker among workers, either extreme. Underworking, either, staying home and drawing unemployment when you're capable of working, that's a sign of relapse for an eating disorder person. Years ago, we had a wonderful psychiatrist here she'd fly in every Wednesday from Dallas. or every other Wednesday. In fact, she came every Wednesday for years. And she would never sign anyone's disability, particularly, well, she wouldn't sign anybody, but particularly anorexics. She said if you want to sign their death certificate, sign for them to get disability, because then they have to stay sick in order to draw it. So if you're laying around at home, as an anorexic or a bulimic or a compulsive overeater, just practicing your eating disorder and not working, what I'd recommend is suit up, show up, go get a job, and if you can't find a good job, get a bad job. Get something where you can get some order in your life, So I'm preaching a little bit, and so look at that structured or unstructured time. And then about this time, before relapse really hits, they begin to avoid communication with family members, particularly around the eating disorder. They don't want to talk about it, and they don't want the family mentioning it. It's none of their business, And to a certain limit, that's true, and that's why we have Family Week, and we like to teach the family what to do and really more what not to do with the client. But we also teach them confrontations, and if you're living with someone that is obviously back in their eating disorder or beginning to relapse, the most kind thing that a family member can do is to do a confrontation. For instance, let's say it's the wife, honey, when I see you skipping meals and throwing half of your meal away when we do eat, what I think is you're back into your eating disorder, and I allow myself to feel a lot of pain and anger and fear, and what I would need or like for you to do is to call the treatment center, call your sponsor, get back on track. And what I intend to do for myself is I'm going to a CODA meeting, I'm going to an Al-Anon meeting, I'm going to go to a movie, I'm going to go have some fun, and I'm going to take my eyes off of you, that I love you and I care about you, and I am afraid you're back in your eating disorder. That's a confrontation the family can do. You don't need to stay on their back and get out of their plate, stay out of their plate, but if you see a loved one, an anorexic going the other way, by all means do a confrontation. If you see an overeater back in the food, do a confrontation. Lovingly, okay, the way that we taught you. And so what happens is, this is before relapse, really what happens to the eating disorder person. They start having resentments again. They get to thinking about what people have done for them, not for them, but to them. And they have, quit talking to their sponsors. So instead of calling the sponsor and talking about those resentments, they hold them inside and they just boil over them and think about them and think about them. And then their defense mechanisms resurface, and either it's a wall or they, whatever they use to keep people away from them will resurface. So think about that. And then they get to looking around at restaurants or mealtime with family members or special occasions, and they get to envying people that can just eat anything they want. I really thought, and I'm honest about this, my sister was, and my father were thin. Average weight, perfect weight, never had a weight problem. My husband never had a weight problem. I've lived around a lot of people who have had normal eating habits and lived within a normal weight range. And what I made up in my mind is that they could eat anything they wanted anytime and they didn't gain weight. Well, that is my foolish thinking. No, normal people, healthy people, they basically eat 3 meals a day. Most of them don't eat anything in between. They might have a snack, but that slump in the afternoon if their blood sugar goes down. But they're not focused on food. They eat to stoke their engine. It's not, just to keep the body going. They don't feel and look about food like we do. And so that was a misconception on my part. I just thought they could eat anything they wanted, and I just envied them, and that's not true. So another thing is what you can see pre-symptoms of relapse is a person loses their gratitude. Right at first in early recovery, we just get so grateful for recovery and get excited about recovery. And then after a while, we get to losing that gratitude. And that's a dangerous place. That's before, because the next place you're getting to, not like yourself, and then you get resentful of other people, and then by this time you're, going in and out of the rooms, not going to many meetings at all. And the food's looking good, or whatever that food behavior is, it's beginning to be in your mind. And so what starts happening, and they're not in full relapse yet, but what they start doing for your anorexics, and y'all are out there, and I hope you can hear me, what they start doing is if they start eating more low-calorie food, and they'll start using no-calorie beverages, no-fat milk, no-fat yogurt, no-fat, 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 no-fat. That's a dangerous place for an anorexic to be in, and that is eating no-calorie food, lettuce, rice cakes, whatever that And this is also the time that the calculator in the brain of an anorexic or a bulimic is coming back to life. An anorexic or a bulimic, and some compulsive overeaters, where you have like a calculator in our mind. We can tell you pretty much every calorie that's in everything, and we just click it off, in our brain. That begins to be kind of perked up, and for your overeater also about this time, they quit weighing and measuring their food. This is individual, absolutely individual, and we teach people here to weigh and measure their food, because most of us get to recovery not knowing what a healthy serving is. I didn't know. I thought a healthy serving was 2 or 3. Anyway, always over-serving myself. And that's another pre-symptom of an overeater, is when you're staying on your meal plan, but you're over-serving yourself a little bit. You add and you over-serve yourself. But for, when you stop weighing and measuring food, like I said, that is pretty much up to you and your sponsor. For me, I did not trust myself around food at all. And I lived in fear of relapse. And the way that I kept from relapsing is I stayed on a meal plan, and I weighed and measured my food. I think we were talking the other day, my daughter Kim and I, probably first 18, 20 years, I weighed and measured every bite that went in my mouth. The scale sat on my bar, on the cabinet, and so did the cups, serving cups. I would do it discreetly when I, had company, but I had to weigh and measure, and I take those scales and cups a lot of times to, particularly in the early days, to restaurants. I didn't embarrass my teenage kids to death, but it was a life or death matter to me. I had to do this to treat my eating disorder because I did not know how to serve myself healthy without weighing and measuring. So for when people particularly, and it can go either way, anorexics or bulimics, and for any eating disorder, compulsive overeater, when you stop paying attention to serving sizes, that's a good indicator of relapse. And then they began to blame their problems on others. Well, my mother, we say around here, it's not one thing, it's our mother. My mother did this, or my dad did this, or they didn't do so-and-so, or my husband, or my partner, or my boss, or my something. You begin to blame your problems on the country, the president, the ex-president. It's always something outside yourself. When you start that negative thinking, you're on your road. You've already got up on the road to relapse. And you become a reactor instead of an actor. Somebody does something to you and you react. You get that rage or that anger going again. It's a good indicator. So this is that you're on the road to relapse. This is what we call you have one nerve left and everybody gets on it. And then you'll say things, well, why does it always happen to me? So you're getting into self-pity. You're getting into bless my heart. And you're getting into the poor me's, poor me, poor me, pour me another drink, or pour me a milkshake, or whatever. The poor me's. And then avoids having fun, and early relapse, preceding relapse, people will stop having fun. And, we're coming out of a pandemic. How much fun have any of us have? We've been very limited in how we can travel, very limited in, to even go to a movie, a concert, or any of that. And so it's been hard to find ways to have fun. But you can create fun in your own home. And I know you've played games, so you've probably worn them out, but play a few more. Another thing you can do is sit down and write a personal note to someone. That is almost unheard of. I was thinking, and I'm not, I was telling my friend Misty the other day, or maybe it was Kim, my daughter Kim, a young man that my son played football with 40 years ago, and they were in the playoffs, and they lost in the playoffs, and he had a bad play, and no one blamed him for losing the game. It takes all of them, the whole team. But he took it really hard. But then he turned around and he was cheering the whole team on, and trying to dry their tears and all. And so I don't even remember doing this, but I wrote that young man a note and complimented him on how he treated his teammates and complimented him for his season. I don't remember writing that note, but I got a Facebook request, a friend request a couple of months ago from that man. That was 40 years ago, and he thanked me for sending him that note because he said, and every time that he gets down, he pulls that note out and rereads it. how did I know that that could affect somebody like that? So when you're down and feeling sorry for yourself and about to relapse in your eating disorder, get out of yourself long enough, make a telephone call, but send notes of encouragement to people. And it's going to help you in that moment, and it may not make a difference to that other person, but it'll make a difference to you. And you might accidentally, who knows, when someone gets that letter, maybe they're on the verge of relapse, or maybe they're on the verge of killing themselves. We never know. So if a name pops into your mind, send them a note. And so then what happens is people start rationalizing, well, this bite won't hurt, or this time won't hurt, well, it's birthday. I can eat a piece of my own birthday cake. Now, I will tell you, not everyone who has an eating disorder has that addiction to sugar. And the only way you know if you have any addiction, food addiction, and food addiction is a freestanding eating disorder by itself. And what that means is you have an addiction, an abnormal addiction to a particular food. And that is like sugar, high carbs, like I always say, I've never seen anybody addicted to broccoli. But if you have an addiction to sugar, you might want, and how you know is if you can take it or leave it. If you can have one or two cookies and walk away and forget about it, you may not have a problem with sugar. But if you have a problem with sugar and you start rationalizing that, oh, well, it won't hurt for me to have so-and-so, your mind is already in relapse, although you haven't picked up. And so then by this time, you just find recovery miserable. You just don't even, not only do you not like yourself, you don't like anyone, you're just miserable. And I'll tell you, some of the happiest people I have ever known in my life belong to a 12-step program. Because, if I went to a 12-step program and everyone sat around in doom and gloom and complained and all, why would I want to go back? You're going to find some very happy people. And now I will say you're going to find the happiest people in AA and NA, particularly AA. Because when an alcoholic stops drinking, their life begins to get better instantly. It's a little harder with us with eating disorders because we have to deal with our substance every single solitary day. So you're going to walk into OA meetings and you're going to find people in there that are, having a bad day, or they're having problems with food, and they, will complain. Cut them a little slack and don't judge them, because the very next, I'll give an example. When I was in treatment, we went to a Sunday afternoon meeting, and it was a step meeting. And I've been in OA for years. I've been in Al-Anon. I knew the steps. I taught the steps in the treatment center where I worked, so I was versed in the steps. I really thought I knew something, but I knew nothing, as far as applying it to my own eating disorder. So we were sitting around the table, and this, it was on the ninth step. And it came this man's turn, and see, I was brand new. I didn't know that man, and what he said was, well, there's times I just think those folks need to apologize to me instead of me going and making amends to them. And I wanted to correct him, and then he kind of chuckled. But he said, I think they need to start coming making amends to me. Well, all week I judged him. I talked to the therapist. I didn't want to go back to that meeting because it was a negative meeting, all a bunch of BS. And they made me go back, of course. And so the following Sunday I went. That man was leading the meeting. Come to find out, he had over 25 years in OA. He had continuous absence for 25 years. He was just kind of having a little bad day, and he said, he made his amends. He said, I probably shouldn't have said that in front of newcomers, but I was just having a bad day, and I just said, those people need to come make amends to me instead of me going to make amends to them. So quit judging people in a 12-step program is the point of this, including me. Okay, and then isolation begins to set in, and then feels depressed, and then what's the use? I mean, I've done what they told me to do. I don't think I'm ever going to get better. I can't do, what's the use? And then more of that self-pity, and I'm not, I'm using a whiny voice, but that's kind of how we get. We just have that little whiny ass voice. Well, bless my heart, I can't do anything, And so this is when we began to have some slips. Slips are different than relapse. A slip is what we call a lapse. And a slip is, say you get on a track, a track for recovery. A meal plan, you're taught what to do, either in treatment or by all of you, how to treat your eating disorder. So you start treating it, and then life happens, something happens, and you step off of the track and you take a little side road. You skip a meal, or you eat something it's not on your food plan, whatever. You take a side road. That's a slip. That is not a relapse. And you get right back on the track. And the main thing is tell on yourself. We're sick as we are secret. If you don't get on that phone and talk about it and tell somebody out loud, go to a meeting and say it out loud. Now this is one reason, and I love the CHIP system, but sometimes we can go and talk, have a slip. And this is what you need to talk to your sponsor about. I've seen people in OA recommit and get a desire chip to recommit. I mean, every month or every other month, or real often. So you talk with your sponsor to see what is a slip and what's a relapse. If it's a slip, this is my opinion, you do not have to go and get a desire chip and recommit and start your time over. Talk to your sponsor about that. Now, if you're in hardcore relapse, absolutely. You need to go in and recommit, get a desire chip, and reestablish your abstinence. But this is where good sponsorship comes in. And if you do have a slip, get off of your own back. Write about it. Write about what was happening before, what led up to it, and the feelings around it, and what did you do about it? Did you pick up a phone and call and talk to someone? So this is about, we must invite people into our eating disorder by telling them the truth. You don't have to tell the truth to the whole world, but you must tell at least one safe person the truth about what you're doing with food. And this is what I talk about. If you're going to eat something off of your meal plan, do it with intention. Tell your sponsor ahead of time. If you think that you might want to, maybe you think maybe you can eat sugar. If you want to do that, talk with your sponsor about it. Do it with intention. Put it in your meal plan and have a witness. What gets people with eating disorders is the secret eating, the hiding food. And so do your eating out in front of people. Do it with intention and do it with a witness. So if, like I said, if you decide that you want to try a certain food, for me, it was peanut butter. I couldn't keep peanut butter in my house. And then through when that mental obsession for food, that God removed that, I decided to try peanut butter. I've got a jar in there now, and I made me a little folded over sandwich this morning, and I got busy. And I am not an anorexic, do not think that, but I got busy. I only ate half of that. Now before I would have eaten, when I finish this, I'll go finish my breakfast. But before, I couldn't have got myself out of that peanut butter jar. So when you have, a sensitivity to certain foods at first, and then you've been in recovery for a while, and you want to try a food that maybe you have, took out of your, meal plan altogether. If you're going to eat it with intention. I'm wearing this out, I know, but anyway, do it with intention and have a witness to it. Don't do it in secret. And then watch what it does to your body. Does it trigger that mental obsession to want more? The next day, do you have to have the same thing over by the end of the week? Are you eating it every day? That will tell you that you don't need to eat that certain food. So this is where food addiction and eating disorders differ from alcohol and drugs. Alcohol and drugs, we can never go back there. With food, it's trickier. And as you go along, you may be able to eat certain foods that you couldn't eat at the beginning. Or you may have to realize that there's some certain foods that you thought you could eat that starts knowing your name too well. And what that means, you go to the grocery store and it calls your name every time you go. It's here I am, come this way, come down this aisle. So if you've got a certain food that, wants to have a relationship with you, that's early relapse. Just keep going down that aisle. All righty, let's see now. This begins to have the slips, and if those slips, if you keep having slips and slip and slip, that's relapse. But recovery is catching ourselves here, in midstream. Can you see, when you're in recovery, you're up here, and if you slip, it's catching yourself and telling the truth to your sponsor. And then the two of you work out that you need to go to your OA meeting and talk about it. That's something that you and your sponsor needs to figure out. By the way, that's why we have sponsors, because a lot of this stuff we can't figure out by ourselves. And that's good, because I'll just put it in first terms. When I'm my own sponsor or when I'm my own therapist, I've got an idiot working for me. I have got an idiot when I try to be my own counsel and my own sponsor. So this is not a help yourself program. It is a we program, and reaching out to each other and to sponsoring other people. So to what happens then, they stop going to meetings altogether. They change sleep patterns. They get to where they want to sleep all the time or can't sleep at all, begin to be critical of others, experience extreme loneliness. And then their plans begin to fail. That aftercare plan is nowhere to be found, and avoids talking about the problem, becomes, like I said, very secretive. And then they get convinced, well, maybe I don't even have an eating disorder. Maybe I just have a little weight problem. I'm going to go down here to Weight Watchers, or I'm going to go on that diet. I'm going to go on this deal, or I'm going to skip this meal. Your mind, the eating disorder starts between the two ears before we ever pick up. And so, call your sponsor, tell them yourself, be honest, return to treatment. If you get in relapse and you can't get back on track, there's no shame in coming back to treatment. Come back to a 4-day, come back to RT, because you have a disease. You have a disease that keeps on giving. And it's like any other disease, like cancer or heart disease or any chronic illness that is progressive. If you don't treat it every single solitary day, you will relapse and you will get back into, and I will tell you, I hate to tell you, if you don't get some help and if you stay in relapse, you're going to wind up in a place that is more progressed than it was when you started. So even if you are in early relapse, pick up the phone and call Shades. Talk to Cam. She's sitting right there. Talk to Cam. Cam doesn't have, by the grace of God, she does not have anybody's eating disorder. She doesn't. but she's worked with a lot of you folks. She talks to people. She knows me and Kim, and she knows about eating disorders. But call and talk to one of the therapists. Call and talk to me. Call and talk to Kim. Before you pick up the food, reach out and pick up that phone and call someone. Call your sponsor. There is help. You are worth more than relapse. You are worth treatment. You're worth recovery, and this is an ongoing process, folks. People come in for 42 days or do a 4-day, and they think, okay, well, I've got it. Thank you very much. And they're going down the road. And that's when the hard work really starts, is after you walk out the doors of any treatment center. So I've talked way over, but I guess maybe I needed to say what I had to say. Any comments, questions? Let's talk. Anything that anyone would like to ask, or anything personal that you want to share?